Hello and fáilte to the Healthwaves podcast. I'm Eilish, a nutritional therapist and host. To be diagnosed with a thyroid condition such as Hashimoto's or Graves' disease is quite daunting and a little bit scary. But today I'm joined by Gemma Lawlor, a nutritional therapist who works in this area and has been on her own journey. She's going to tell us all about it now. So you're really welcome, Gemma.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Maybe to begin with, you could share how you ended up working in this area. And I know you have your own story around thyroid condition.
Yeah, okay. So if we go back to 2013, I was working in England. I'm a pharmacist. I was working in the pharmaceutical industry over there. And I moved home. So between the whole move and living and working over there, I was under quite a lot of stress, and I found the whole process of moving home quite stressful. Over the first few months of coming back home, I noticed that I had lost weight, and I didn't really think anything about it. But then over the next few months, I was starting to feel quite anxious, and I wasn't sleeping. I was still losing weight, and I had a tremor in my hand. It meant that when I lifted a cup of tea, it would shake like that. My dad has a tremor in his hand, so I thought maybe I just have it too. I felt awful. I felt really tired. I was exhausted all the time. I was working in 2 separate jobs, so I was under a lot of pressure. And I just said, I need to go. I didn't have time to go to the GP. So eventually I made time to go to the GP, and she said, Gemma, you need to change. Your blood I got a blood test done. My blood test came back. My thyroid hormones were really high. It was an indication that I had Graves' disease. They tested for antibodies as well in that blood test. So I was referred to a consultant, and the diagnosis was you have Graves' disease. So at that point, I was told most people go on medication for 18 months. After 18 months, they'll come off it. 50% of people go into remission, 50% of the people don't. Cross your fingers and hope for the best. So I was like, so I crossed my fingers and I hope for the best. And I still didn't feel 100%. Some symptoms improved, others didn't. So I didn't, and I just thought to myself, something needs to change. So I knew that stress would have a huge impact on the condition. So I decided to go and see a life coach. While I did the research into the credentials of that life coach, I saw that the Irish Life Coach Institute were actually having a training program quite close to where I live. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to become a life coach. Halfway through the coaching course, I quit my job. I realised this is not doing me any favours in that particular job. I am a pharmacist by profession and I miss helping people, but I wanted to focus more on nutrition. This is where I decided to study to become a nutritional therapist. I qualified as a nutritional therapist in 2019. And from there, I went on to study functional medicine with the Institute for Functional Medicine.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about how the condition comes about and the difference between Graves' disease and Hashimoto's on the other scale of thyroid?
Okay, so with normal thyroid function, your brain gives signals to various different parts to release certain hormones.
Yeah.
And that has an effect on the hormones that are released by your thyroid. So it's T3 and T4. But when you have an overactive thyroid, there's too much of this hormone being pumped out. It regulates the metabolism in your body.
Yeah.
So it's like the conductor in an orchestra. If it tells you to play really fast,
brilliant,
lots of hormones will be pumped out, and it means everything moves really fast.
Hence the weight loss and high metabolism, all in that.
It was warm all the time. I was anxious. I had frequent bowel movements. Ended up absolutely okay. So then the opposite of that, if you have an underactive thyroid, there aren't enough thyroid hormones being produced. So it's like the opposite. You're cold, you're constipated, your skin can quite dry, you're gaining weight, absolutely. And there's so many different symptoms because every cell in your body has thyroid receptors. Yeah. We could both have the same condition, but have different symptoms.
A lot of the symptoms, overactive and underactive, can be similar in terms of fatigue.
Fatigue, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a huge one in both.
Yeah.
When you get your blood test done, the doctor will generally check to see if you have any thyroid antibodies. If you have antibodies present, this means that you have an autoimmune thyroid condition. This is an immune condition. So there is something has irritated or, I suppose, annoyed your immune system, and that is causing certain antibodies to attack your thyroid. So in the case of Graves' disease, there's 2 different types of antibodies, and basically they will stimulate your thyroid to produce more and more thyroid hormone, hence all of the symptoms that you would have. And then conversely, in Hashimoto's, the antibodies would tend to destroy the thyroid tissue, which means it doesn't function as well as it does.
Yeah.
And you don't have enough thyroid hormone around your body.
And we see a lot in practice as nutritional therapists. Often thyroid issues can play a role in somebody's overall health, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they have either Hashimoto's or Graves'.
There's generally issues with your stomach, something like leaky gut, and you would also need a trigger. For example, it could be an infection or chronic stress.
All autoimmune conditions need to be triggered. So much gut health is connected with every autoimmune condition. Gemma, when somebody comes to you, when you get a client to contact you because they have either Graves' or Hashimoto's, or whether they've been diagnosed or whether they feel that this is at play, what do you do with them? What's your first process?
First and foremost, we would look at their health history.
Yeah.
We would do a very in-depth questionnaire, and we would document it nearly on a timeline to see when did it start.
Yeah.
An awful lot of people might say, I haven't felt well since they had some sort of infection, or it could have been a car crash or something like that.
Stress, all that.
A big shock to the body. That's a good place to start on, is doing a timeline for a person. I would generally look at their current diet just to see what they eat day in, day out, where we can make some changes. I would look at not only their nutrition, so obviously I'd be looking to see what the regular diet is, but also how do they sleep? What are their stress levels? Do they relax? Do they do exercise? Do they have family and friends, a sense of community? Because that's really important, I think, as well. If they had blood tests from their GP, I would look at the blood tests to see what we could work on. Blood tests would generally give an
of what else is going on in their health. And can you tell from that, would you be able to tell the thyroid hormones from the general blood tests, or would you have to go further with more in-depth?
Sometimes if they have checked for thyroid hormones, there may only be 2 that they've checked for. Oftentimes they don't check for antibodies. So I think that's first and foremost, because your plan will be quite different as to whether it's an autoimmune condition or not.
Yes, of course. With an autoimmune condition, you have to think very differently in terms of your type of protocol.
Absolutely. When you think autoimmune, there's gut health involved as well. And it's not just focusing on thyroid. It's a bit of both.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What kind of recommendation, if you know it's not an autoimmune condition and you know that they need thyroid support, or what kind of, you go in with nutrition, lifestyle, all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And first and foremost, a lot of people can have food sensitivities. We might try a certain style of diet, maybe an elimination diet, where we look at foods that would cause a sensitivity or intolerance. For some people, it may be gluten, it may be dairy, it could be other things with others. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it can be a bit of trial and error as to what will work and what won't work. And we would take out certain foods that are likely to cause issues, but we would also put in certain foods that would work as anti-inflammatory, foods that would provide the right kind of energy, slow release energy, and foods that are, if you've heard the phrase, eat the rainbow.
Yes.
Colourful foods that have lots of phytonutrients that will really nourish both your immune system and your thyroid.
And in terms of your own condition, what did you put in place for yourself?
For my condition in particular, I had some functional testing done.
Okay, so you went a little deeper.
I went a little deep.
Okay.
I wanted to know exactly what was going on. So I did.
So then you knew exactly what imbalances there were.
Absolutely.
Were there many imbalances?
There were,
in terms of
yeah.
your gut microbiome?
And I also had some genetic testing done as well.
Ah, very interesting.
So I think for me, when I saw my genetic tests results, it was like a signpost. Nearly all of the genetic variations nearly signposted me to having Graves. If I had seen that 20 years ago, I could have put plans in place not to end up with Graves' disease.
So do you think with the right nutrients, the right possible extra supplements,
Absolutely.
You would have been able to prevent it?
Possibly. However, I never would have been where I am now.
That's very true.
It was a good thing.
What were the nutrients then that were really important for you?
Vitamin A, vitamin D was really important.
Yeah.
Omega-3, looking at those as well, because they're all really good for inflammation. Factors that help make thyroid hormones. Protein is just so important as well. I think people may not eat enough protein. Sometimes women in particular may not eat enough food, enough calories.
So unfortunately, that comes with the whole society and weight denying themselves maybe of protein.
Yeah.
Denying themselves of food. Do you have a story maybe of somebody who's called to you, how they presented, what kind of protocols you gave them, how they moved on? Would you be able to share?
Yes, absolutely. I have it here in my notes. So I have had a client, let's just call her M. She was 35. She had a really stressful job, quite a high power job. She really busy life, always out with friends, always on the go. And when she came to me, she had symptoms of weight loss. She was always hungry, so she was constantly eating. Not necessarily the right kind of foods, but she was hungry all the time. She suffered with anxiety and insomnia, and she was tired all of the time.
And yet go probably all the time.
Absolutely. That phrase, tired but wired. Yeah. On one hand, your body's telling you to go, but because you're going so much, you become quite tired. So she was, as I said, craving food, craving coffee. She was having maybe 5 or 6 coffees a day. Didn't really eat breakfast. Maybe would grab a scone or a pastry on the way into work. Sandwich, shop bought sandwich for lunch. Dinner wasn't too bad. She didn't drink too much water, and she would have alcohol most nights to unwind. A few glasses of wine. From her questionnaire, she told me there was a family history of autoimmune disease. Her mother had rheumatoid arthritis, two aunts with thyroid problems.
We all do.
Absolutely. She was put on medication. She was diagnosed with Graves. She was prescribed medication, but her bloods weren't really where they should.
So it wasn't really having an impact.
No.
And she probably wasn't feeling great on this medication.
She was told she'd more than likely have to have her thyroid removed sooner rather than later because she wasn't responding to the medication. She also had frequent bowel movements, and whenever she ate, she got quite bloated, and she had a lot of indigestion after eating. For her initial protocol, we looked at what kind of foods to eat and how to eat them when she would sit down for, and especially breakfast as well, to make sure she was having enough protein, enough carbohydrates, enough kind of vegetables and brightly coloured food. Because she was hungry all the time, I got her to have 5 small meals a day instead of breakfast, lunch, dinner, and constantly snacking.
This is where the individual advice is so important.
Absolutely.
Because one person, 5 meals a day would not be appropriate.
Yes.
Every person and every condition is so individual, and we treat them, we work with them on such an individual basis.
Absolutely.
So this client needed 5 smaller meals.
5 smaller meals.
Maintain, blood sugars to help her.
And give her the energy, the right kind of energy that will keep her going through the day. We reduced her coffee down to 1 per day and no coffee after lunch because that was affecting her sleep. Increased good quality protein and carbohydrates and reduced the pastries. We eliminated gluten and dairy.
It's because the autoimmune aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Where gluten plays a huge role.
We talked about non-alcoholic ways to wind down after busy periods of work. For example, breathing techniques. even recommended some yoga classes.
Brilliant.
Even yoga on YouTube. And herbal teas. Didn't tell her to completely give up alcohol. She still had a glass of wine maybe at the weekends, instead of it being every night. Worked on ways to improve her digestion, and worked on her sleep routine. And we also looked at the toxins that she was using, because your thyroid is very sensitive. Sometimes, even if you think when you spray a perfume, where do you spray it? You spray it on your neck. And when you rub body lotion into it, that all gets absorbed. And some of them can actually cause disruption to certain organs. And I think your thyroid is a very sensitive one and can be affected. So we worked at cleaning up her kind of makeup products and her personal care products. Right. So due to her family history of autoimmune conditions, we did a thyroid balance DNA report. This showed that her Graves had a lot of genes that may have helped to cause her Graves.
So with the DNA and then the triggers, then probably, and then active nutrients and whatever, probably just triggered it on.
And she had genes so it showed that certain genes that transport vitamin D weren't working properly. So,
which is very,
absolutely.
I have them myself, really. I couldn't believe how common it was until I got my own genetics done. And my husband has the same genes, so I presume the kids have.
Absolutely.
And it's a real eye-opener. And it just shows how common it is. We should be taking vitamin D, really, so much of it, everybody. And then without knowing whether you have that gene or not, that's where testing is so important, because it can be supplementing with this gene to what's recommended, but still not bringing your levels up. It's not enough.
And especially with an autoimmune condition where inflammation is
really vital there. That must have really helped her. She had the supplement then quite high.
Yes. And it showed that she had an increased inflammatory response. So if she got an infection, her body would have an immune response to that more so than maybe you or I would.
Okay.
So that's where the anti-inflammatory foods came in, and that worked really well with her, and also other supplements as well. So I would generally work with people for 12 weeks.
Okay.
So this was over the course of the 12 weeks.
Okay. So you give them a set of recommendations for 4 or 6 weeks to work on them.
Yeah, there was that, and I would constantly check in with people.
Okay.
And as well as the recommendations, we would have coaching. I can give you a set of protocols to follow, but you can leave them on the kitchen table and never follow them. And I suppose a lot of things that we do on a daily basis, it's all habit. So it's how to change the habit of the 2 glasses of wine every night, or the bar of chocolate after your dinner every day. So we worked on all of that, how to implement her sleep routine, that kind of thing. She had more energy. Her bowel movements weren't as frequent as they were. She stopped losing weight. She wasn't as anxious anymore. She wasn't as bloated after eating anymore, which was really good. She was managing a work-life balance. She was implementing some relaxation techniques as well. In further follow-ups, she still had some fatigue, but she was managing that. If she was feeling tired, she would cancel plans with friends or work from home instead of working in the office. The digestive issues went away completely. So she wasn't bloated after eating anymore, which was really good, because it's such a big thing on how you feel on a daily basis.
Did she continue on medication?
Yes, she did. So her bloods were much better and her dosage of medication was decreased.
Okay, so did she have to then stay in touch with her GP and get monitored while she was doing this?
Yeah.
Because she would need to adjust her medications accordingly.
Absolutely.
If what you're doing is having similar effects.
Don't take your medication or come off your medication. It's in conjunction.
But it may have to be adjusted.
It may need to be adjusted, absolutely, because we're working on strengthening and nourishing your immune system. It's not being irritated anymore, so it's not affecting your thyroid anymore. They'd need to be in touch with their GP. So she was well on her way to remission, which was fantastic. She wasn't scared anymore that she'd have to have her thyroid taken out. So that was really good.
Having the thyroid removed can't be a good result for anybody.
I think that it's good to educate yourself as to options that are available. they are there for a reason.
That is a brilliant result then. So going forward now, she's able to manage her own health.
Absolutely.
And support herself. And she doesn't have to have her thyroid removed. She's not fatigued as much. She knows now the right foods to eat. Her digestive system is good, and means pending that her immune system is going to improve for all kinds of immune reactions and for general health, which is brilliant. That must be fabulous for you to see results. And as I said in the beginning, it is so daunting to be given this diagnosis, and even the sounds of the conditions, even like Hashimoto's, great.
I know.
They're awful words.
Oh, they are. They really are.
But they're scary. Yeah. Great disease.
I know.
An awful name.
Yes.
To then have these results with your health is just fantastic. And you obviously are managing your own health as well.
Yes.
And how are you today?
Yeah, I know. I did have a relapse. Was it 2021 or 22 after a vaccination? Within 2 weeks of having the vaccination, I felt tired. I knew myself that I didn't feel right. But I redid everything that I did before, and it worked out really well. I feel great.
It was great then that you had the knowledge to put everything into place, and to bring yourself back, thankfully. Yeah, thankfully, and didn't do anything more harm. Would you be able to give us, it might be too much to ask for, 3 tips? You might have to go a little further.
Okay.
And that could be lifestyle, it could be supplements that you feel are really crucial for this condition, or nutrition, obviously.
Okay, the number 1 tip I would say is get support. Because if you go onto Dr. Google, there's just so much conflicting wrong information.
I know.
You generally need help. So I would say, first and foremost, get support. So number 2, find out if it's autoimmune. If you get a blood test back from your GP and they say you have an issue with your thyroid, you know if it's autoimmune.
Go further. If you haven't had your antibodies tested, go further and find out whether it's just an issue, whether you need support with your thyroid, or whether you have an autoimmune condition. Really important.
From a nutrition point of view, look at the food you eat, add in as much colour as you can. That's where all the goodness comes from the food. And if you're finding that quite daunting, thinking about changing your diet, don't take anything out. Add stuff in. Add in the good stuff. And you'll start to see. So rather than thinking, oh God, I can't have bread, I can't have this, I can't have that. Add stuff in rather than taking it out. So it doesn't feel like it's restrictive. And when you start adding in the good stuff and really good nutrition, your tastes change. You're probably going to be more full because you're eating better fats, more protein. Absolutely.
So then you can start removing without feeling deprived. Brilliant. It's a really good tip.
Number 2, supplement-wise.
Yeah.
For an autoimmune condition, I would also, as we spoke earlier on with regard to vitamin D, so many Irish people are deficient in vitamin D. I don't think they test it anymore.
It's really hard to get tested. And I think they just presume they provide everybody. But then you don't know how much somebody needs without testing. And I think the stats are like late 60s or 70 something % are not getting enough, are deficient or suboptimal. And then there's such a difference between optimal and just sufficient vitamin D. And we want optimal, we don't want just sufficient.
Absolutely. If you test your vitamin D level, you'll know all about that.
Yes, certainly.
So test for that and supplement accordingly. From a supplement point of view, I would also recommend magnesium for a lot of people, because generally with Graves, people are very stressed, they're very anxious, whereas magnesium is great for that.
So it'll be magnesium bisglycinate.
Yes. Or also sometimes the magnesium salt, foot soap works really
lovely.
Well. It's easy to do while you're watching telly or reading a book.
It's actually a lovely way of absorbing magnesium. Really. And as well, you're not adding another supplement into somebody, which sometimes as nutrition therapists, you want to give them everything. You have to be realistic at the same time. Yeah. There's some really nice magnesium creams even.
Yeah. And it can be part of your bedtime routine, rubbing the creams on your legs, arms, or having the foot soap.
Okay, so magnesium. Anything else then? Any vital sort of nutrients?
From I'd say just moving on to lifestyle, if you wanted to make some changes, I would look at how busy you are. Everybody's stressed these days. What changes can you make? How can you make life a little bit easier? I would say turn off the news.
Absolutely, I second that.
Because that just stresses everybody out.
Yeah.
Most of us have our phones in our hands for the majority of the day. And so put your phone to bed an hour before you go, because it just helps. If you tend to be anxious, or if your condition is causing anxiety, listening to bad news all day long, having your phone in front of you, having access to everything that's going on, it's too much. Your brain is just overstimulated. So they would be, from a lifestyle point of view, what I would recommend.
Brilliant. They're fantastic tips. And it's amazing how all these small changes can bring about such a huge change.
It's all lots of different small changes. Yeah. It's not a magic wand.
And this is where nutritional therapy is so important, because you're getting down into the nitty gritty, where you're dealing with their sleep, their stress, their anxiety, their lifestyle, their nutrients, what they're eating on a daily basis. The support that we can give to somebody with a condition like this is fantastic.
Absolutely.
And we're not asking them to go down the road of nutritional therapy in place of medication. We're talking about working together and not inside. I really feel strongly about getting this message out there to people who know they need to be on a medication, or they are working with a doctor, but there's so much we can do to help. Even their medication will work better if they're
absolutely
in a better place health-wise.
Yes.
So this has been a really interesting conversation, and it's so common as a condition, both underactive, overactive, Hashimoto's, Graves', and it is a little bit more common in women than men, but both can have it.
Tends to be more so women.
It's interesting, but anyway, both can get it. Very common. Brilliant tips, and thank you so much for sharing your journey and everything that you do. Thank you, Gemma.
You're very welcome. Thank you.